It can be hard to find the perfect apartment, and if you're neurodivergent, it is even harder. Hello, my name is Adina. I am an online science autistic architect, and in this video I was thinking on sharing some thoughts and ideas on how to find the perfect apartment for you if you're neurodivergent. But I am autistic. Part of that is that I have a problem in communicating my thoughts and ideas. So I was thinking, why not look at other YouTubers and compare that with our neurodivergent brain and see if we can find something that can help us. Last week, Daniel Titchener uploaded a video of his new apartment, and you can tell that he is an architect. He explains really well on what to look for when apartment hunting. So I was thinking, why not look at this video together, and I will share my thoughts and ideas on what you can do to find an apartment that works for your neurodivergent brain.
We just moved into a new apartment again, and it's got me thinking about home layouts and just how easy they are to get wrong. And so in this video, I want to share with you some of my architectural expertise in walking you through some of the most common home layout mistakes and the often simple and cost-effective solutions that can completely transform the way that your home feels to live in. Now, showing you around this apartment is one thing, but moving in here with family is another. The floors had years of dirt build-up, which even after a full mop still didn't clean, and in the ensuing chaos of moving in with our busy family. Okay, so this is the floor plan of our apartment, and what I really love about this compared to our last one is that you enter through this little entryway nook with a closet that's immediately opposite you, instead of just walking straight into the living space, which helps to kind of separate some of the entryway's chaos and energy. As you move into this primary area of the home.
Okay, this is a really good point. His new apartment has a separate space for the entryway to close off the chaos, as I said. And this is really important for us who are autistic, to have a separate space like this. Many of us who are neurodivergent, for us, it takes longer for the brain to process information. So having a separate space for the entryway gives our brain the possibilities to process information and keep out the chaos of the apartment. Last week I was apartment hunting for my aunt, who's a wheelchair user. And one problem we had finding an apartment for her is the minimum standard for an accessible space is a turnaround space of 120 centimeters in diameter. And what does this have to do with autism and ADHD and neurodivergency? Well, it's really great to have a separate entrance space like this, but especially for those who has ADHD, we need a space to have all of the things we need in the entryway, so we are not running around throughout our home in the morning to grab everything we need. If you're apartment hunting and it has a separate entranceway like this, perfect. A separate entrance space like this, perfect. But what you really want to look for is a separate entrance space who has a 150 centimeters turnaround space in diameter. This gives you the opportunity to add things to the entryway that you need. I think the Clutterbug lady did a video about this.
As you move into this primary area of the home, we've got these big corner windows which are behind me, which were a huge selling point for us in choosing an apartment over a townhome, as the extra natural light coming in through windows like these make a huge difference to your overall mood levels and well-being. This space wraps around to this.
Okay, this is a great selling point of his apartment, and this is something you also should look for when apartment hunting. This apartment not only have one corner window, it has two. Why corner windows so great? Well, if you're neurodivergent, you often have sensory issues to the sensories. To create a better light sensory space, or to layer light. And if you can have light from two different directions in a room, it's perfect. If you have it in a corner, it's even better. In a famous architect's building, they love to add corner windows, and it is because of the great layering of lighting. But as he explains here, you also get the problem of if you have full walls of windows, you have no space to place your TV.
Is that there are fewer walls, leaving only one wall that's available in this apartment to place furniture against. Now, the most obvious place for a TV is right here. This leaves the remaining space for the dining table to be placed conveniently here next to the kitchen, which is right where you'd expect it. However, this means that the only space that's left for additional seating either awkwardly blocks the way to the balcony door or places its back to the primary circulation route and the main entrance, with all of its movement and energy, which isn't ideal. Now, this is exactly how this apartment's layout was advertised and staged, and it's exactly how most people would set up a room like this, because for convenience, you generally...
Yeah, this is a great point he points out. The apartment is staged as if you should have the TV to the wall. To access the balcony, you need to walk through the living room space. And this is another thing you need to think about when it comes to neurodivergency. You need to think of your home in terms of sensory levels. Yeah, you need to think about your home in terms of sensory levels and if they are low or high. And a living room should be low. But if you have people who walking through the living room space to access the balcony, it's not low, it will become higher. This is a thing you can think about when apartment hunting. How do people move through the space, and do they need to walk through, on one hand, a really low sensory space to access another space? It's probably not a low sensory space, it will become higher.
Require any circulation around it, which opens up the option for a larger piece down the line, while also establishing new sightlines and a social connection between the sofa and the kitchen, instead of the living area having its back turned against the rest of the room, which is especially important in our home, as the kitchen is inevitably the place that everyone ends up congregating in.
This is a great thing he points out. The importance of sightlines. Many of us who's autistic use alternative communication. Here in Scandinavia, us autistic use sign language. And if you have your back against the kitchen, you will not... You can't talk about your head above your head, but it is easy to communicate with your child if you can directly see them from the kitchen.
When you look at it, is that this apartment has an enormous 10-foot kitchen island. Now, in our last couple of homes, these have been much smaller, at around half the size, which is something that I actually prefer, as, without trying to sound ungrateful, in apartments and smaller homes, having no island at all is actually the most optimal choice, as it frees up so much space around you to furnish the interior with items and furniture pieces that best suit the life that you actually live, and therefore providing you the option to put a freestanding island there if you want one. Now, for the smaller islands in the smaller kitchens that we've been using, leather stalls from article.
Yes, lots about the shares, but what you do point out about this kitchen island is that it is way too big for this kitchen. The room would have been more flexible if there were no kitchen islands, but it's probably due to regulations. And one thing you need to think about when it comes to kitchen design and neurodivergency, especially if you have PDA or ADHD, is that you need to think about the circulation in the room. U-kitchens is the worst kind of kitchen when you have ADHD and PDA, because you can't circulate in the kitchen, and this is important if you have PDA. Their brains are wired in a way that not everything, but many things can be interpreted as a threat for their brain. And if you also have ADHD or autism and PDA, that's a fun mixture. If you have because many times we who has ADHD or autism often prepare in, it takes a longer time for us to process information, so we always prepare in our brains so it goes to make it go faster. Many neurodivergent people talk about the scripts we have in our brain, and if you already have prepared a script on how to cut onions, for example, and you work in the kitchen with someone else, they will end up in your flow of the kitchen. That's why U-kitchen is the worst kind of kitchen, because it's hard to work. It's hard to be two people working there. But if this kitchen island were smaller, you could take a detour from your prepared script, but also come back to it immediately. I don't know a better way to explain it, but that's my experience of, if they cannot go back quickly to the script in their brain, the brain will experience it as a threat, and they will explode.
Another quirk that makes this apartment quite unique is that it's a double corner unit, as even our master bedroom now gets corner windows, which is amazing. It's still quite hard for me to believe that we're actually paying less for this place compared to our old one, but again, without trying to sound ungrateful, bedrooms with floor-to-ceiling corner windows don't do you many favours when it comes to sleeping. Now, you probably already know that for optimal sleep you need two things: silence, which is helped for us by a white noise machine, and complete darkness, which usually requires fully sealed blackout blinds or floor-to-ceiling blackout curtains. And something that's interesting about the latter is that they have the added benefit of providing your home with better thermal efficiency and acoustics through their ability to absorb sound waves and insulate against solar gain during the summer months, as well as thermal losses through the windows during the colder months.
Many of you probably already know this, that many of us are neurodivergent. need better acoustics, and we have problem we have problem with all of the sensory. So curtains can be a really great way to increase the sensory qualities in the room.
Require using an adhesive track that tends to rip off the ceiling finish upon removal, which is something that I can't do in our place anyway because of the ceiling's textured finish, and it's something that I definitely wouldn't want to deal with down the line regardless. Now, for the longest, and I can see that, and if you've was that simply load your apartment is applicable, besides these caveat, I have only done this because our temperate climate loss and designed. Now, regarding our bed placement, I'm not superstitious and I'm not into feng shui, but one thing I can agree on is that this bed placement is terrible. And this is because the only wall that's wide enough for it to be placed against leaves the door right behind our heads, as well as the passageway to the bathroom being directly adjacent to them. In feng shui, there's this idea of energy or qi that flows through space, that in architectural terms can be mostly...
Yeah, that bed placement is terrible. And all this space in the hall is just terrible. But for some reason they wanted to extend this corridor about 1.5 meters. Something that you need to think about if you have kids with ADHD. Avoid corridors. They will bolt and they will run if they see a corridor.
It only eliminates its which is the position not being directly in line with them, is that movement and sightline creates an opaque partition that in our last apartment's closet. And so as a final takeaway from this video, at the end of the day, despite how good an apartment may be, every layout will have its compromises, whether that's too few walls or too few windows, or simply an awkward layout with existing furniture that won't quite fit. But across all of these problems, the trick of good design isn't simply throwing loads of money at the problem, it's reframing these constraints so that they become celebrated and intentional, which is something that you can do by figuring out how to efficiently use what furniture you have available or what new items you can purchase that are within the constraints of your budget. And finally, if you enjoyed this video, it would mean a great deal to me if I earn your subscription, or if you shared it with someone you know who's dealing with these exact problems. And if you've made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching, and maybe check out this next video too.
No matter how great your apartment is, it will always be something that you have to work around. But another thing I want to point out on this apartment, if you go back to the beginning when you can see the floor plan. Earlier on when you talked about the living room, I mentioned about how you need to think about you need to think about your home in sense of low and high sensory spaces. And if I just quickly add some layers here. The kitchen is a high sensory space, the entryway is a high sensory space, the bathroom is a high sensory space. And if you add to context that you need to have some buffer spaces to this, between these high sensory spaces, you can see this is a really great apartment. The one bedroom that's not that great is probably that one who's next to the kitchen. If you use the bedroom, you probably will wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of the refrigerator. A better design for this apartment, if for someone who's neurodivergent, would be that the kitchen would be in the center of the apartment. This way you gather all of the high sensory spaces in one space. And you have not only one, but 2 spaces in an apartment who is low sensory. Moving the kitchen, you also will have a living room with a wall. Right, I hope that gave you some tips and tricks on how to find an apartment for your neurodivergent brain. And this was my comment on
Daniel Titchener's Architect Explains 4 Common Layout Mistakes and Our New Apartment Tour.
I will link his video down below, so you can watch it on your own. I realize now that I watched it in double speed, but I don't think it will bother you. Bye.